The year was 1990, and somewhere in Los Angeles, a 21-year-old black man sat in a green room that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. He was about to walk onto a television stage where a woman was waiting to destroy him. Her name was Margaret Holloway. Blonde hair, perfect teeth, and a smile that had ended more careers than any scandal in Hollywood. She was the queen of morning television, 14 million viewers, sponsors lined up around the block, and a reputation for asking the questions nobody else dared to ask. But today, she had a special mission. She was going to expose a rapper from Philadelphia as a fraud, a failure, and a threat to American values. His name was Will Smith, and in exactly 43 minutes, he would do something on live television that nobody saw coming. He would smile, and that smile would cost Margaret Holloway everything. But here is what you need to understand first. The young man sitting in that green room was not just nervous. He was broken. The IRS had taken his cars, his house, his jewelry. They had seized nearly everything he owned and slapped him with a debt of $2.8 million. He was famous, and he was completely, utterly broke. His girlfriend had dragged him to a party at Quincy Jones's house just to find a lifeline. And somehow, against all odds, NBC had given him a chance, a sitcom called The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but the show had not aired yet. Hollywood did not believe in him, and Margaret Holloway had invited him onto her show to prove exactly why they were right. What she did not know was that Will Smith had a secret weapon, and it was not his charm. It was something his grandmother gave him when he was 12 years old. If you are watching from the USA, the UK, Canada, or anywhere in the world, drop your location in the comments right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button, because what happens next will stay with you forever. Willard Carroll Smith II was born on September 25, 1968, in West Philadelphia. His mother, Carolyn, worked for the school board. She believed that education was the ladder out of poverty, and she made sure her children climbed every single rung. His father, Willard Sr., owned a refrigeration business. He taught Will that a man's word was his bond, and that discipline was the only difference between dreamers and doers. But it was his grandmother who shaped his soul. When Will was 12, she found his notebook. It was filled with rap lyrics and curse words, lots of them. She did not yell, she did not punish him. She simply wrote a note on the last page. It said, "Dear Willard, truly intelligent people do not have to use words like this to express themselves. Please show the world that you are as smart as we think you are." Will read that note over and over again, and he never used profanity in his music again. But Philadelphia taught him other lessons too. He grew up under the iron hand of Mayor Frank Rizzo, a man who ruled the police with fear and violence. Will would later say that he was called the worst word in the English language by police officers on more than 10 separate occasions. He knew what hatred looked like. He knew how it smelled. And he knew that fighting it with fists only made it stronger. His mother taught him something different. She said, "You do not defeat hatred with hatred. You defeat it with excellence, with dignity, with a smile that says they cannot break you." Will carried those words with him everywhere, and now he was about to need them more than ever. Because 3,000 miles away in Los Angeles, Margaret Holloway was preparing for war. She had seen the pilot episode of Fresh Prince. She had seen Will's charm, his charisma, his dangerous ability to make white audiences love him. And she had decided that America did not need another black entertainer who refused to stay in his lane. She called her producer into her office that morning. "Book him," she said, "before the show airs, before anyone knows his name." Her producer asked what angle they were going for. Margaret smiled. "The angle," she said, "is the truth. We are going to show America who he really is." But she had already made her first mistake. She had studied his tax records. She had never studied his grandmother. The morning of the interview, Will stood in front of a cracked mirror in his tiny apartment. The IRS had taken almost everything, but they had not taken the navy blue suit hanging in his closet. His mother had picked it out 2 years earlier. She had told him, "Dress like you already own the room, and one day you will." He put on the suit, he straightened the tie, he looked at himself, and for a moment, he did not see a broke 21-year-old drowning in debt. He saw the man his grandmother believed he could become. The drive to the studio took 40 minutes. His manager sat in the passenger seat, talking strategy. But Will was not listening. He was thinking about his grandmother's note, about his mother's voice, about every cop who had called him a name he could not repeat. He was thinking about what it meant to walk into a room where nobody wanted you to win. When they arrived at the studio, the hostility was immediate. The receptionist looked at him like he had wandered in from the street. "You are the rapper?" she asked. It was not really a question. "I am the actor," Will said with a smile. "The rapping is just something I do for fun." They led him through long hallways lined with photographs of Margaret's famous guests. Presidents, movie stars, royalty, all white, all staring down at him like judges. The green room was small and windowless. A bowl of browned fruit sat on the table. The air smelled like cigarettes and anxiety. Will understood immediately. This room was designed to make him feel small. 10 minutes later, the door opened. Margaret Holloway walked in. She was smaller in person, but her presence filled the room like perfume and power. She did not offer her hand. "Mr. Smith," she said, "I was not sure you would show. Rappers are not exactly known for their punctuality." Will stood up, extended his hand. "My grandmother always said early is on time and on time is late. I have been here for 20 minutes. Margaret's smile flickered. "How charming," she said. "A grandmother who teaches manners. Well, we are going to have a lovely conversation today. I just want you to be yourself, the real you. Can you do that?" She stepped closer. Her voice dropped. "No pretending to be something you are not. America wants to see the real Will Smith." Will met her eyes. "Ma'am, I have been the real Will Smith my entire life. The question is whether your audience can handle it." Margaret's smile vanished. She turned and walked out without another word. The stage manager appeared. "2 minutes, Mr. Smith." Will took a breath, and then he walked toward the door. What happened next would change everything. If this story is already getting to you, hit that like button right now, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from, because trust me, you are not ready for what comes next. The studio lights hit him like a wall of heat. 200 people sat in the audience, almost all of them white. Margaret was already seated behind her desk, her smile locked and loaded. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "today we have a very interesting guest. He is a rapper from Philadelphia who somehow convinced NBC to give him a television show. Please welcome Will Smith." Scattered applause, curious stares. Will walked onto the stage, sat down and crossed his legs. He smiled. "Thank you for having me, Margaret. You have a beautiful studio here." "We do try to maintain standards," she said. "Speaking of which, I have to ask, you are a rapper. Rap music is known for violence, drugs, and degrading women. Is that the message you want to bring to family television?" Will did not flinch. "That is a great question," he said, "and I appreciate you asking it so directly. My music has never contained profanity. My grandmother once told me that truly intelligent people do not need those words to express themselves, so I do not use them." Your grandmother. How sweet. But surely a young man from the streets of Philadelphia has been exposed to West Philadelphia, Will corrected gently. "And my mother worked for the school board. My father owned his own business. I went to Catholic school and was accepted into a program at MIT. He smiled wider. "The streets I grew up on had libraries, Margaret. We read books there." The audience shifted. A few people exchanged glances. Margaret changed tactics. "Let us talk about your finances," she said. It is public record that the IRS seized your assets. You owe millions in back taxes. Is this really the role model America needs? A young black man who cannot manage his money? Will paused. His smile faded for just a moment. Then it returned, brighter than before. You are absolutely right, he said. I made mistakes. I was 18 with more money than I knew what to do with, and I did not pay my taxes. The IRS now takes 70% of every check I earn. He looked directly into the camera. But here's the thing, Margaret. I am not hiding from it. I am working through it. My parents taught me that when you fall down, you get back up. When you make mistakes, you make them right. He turned back to her. What did your parents teach you about handling mistakes? Silence. Margaret's face flushed red. She had lost control. The audience was leaning toward Will, not her. She needed to destroy him, now. Let us talk about what you are really teaching young black men, she said. You come from a broken community, absent fathers, welfare mothers, children without any real chance of success. And you want us to believe that your face on television will change that? She laughed coldly. You are a rapper who got lucky. In 5 years, nobody will remember your name. And your children, if you ever have any, will grow up knowing their father was nothing. A footnote. She stopped, because Will Smith was no longer smiling. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. You want to talk about my children? Margaret suddenly looked uncertain. Let me tell you something about my family, he said. My grandmother worked her whole life so her children could have opportunities. My mother worked her whole life so I could have opportunities. And I will work my entire life so my children never have to sit in a room and be told they do not belong. He paused. But since you brought up children, let us talk about yours. Margaret's face went pale. What are your children going to think when they watch their mother treat a guest this way? The silence was deafening. And then someone in the back of the audience started to clap. Then another. And Margaret Holloway realized she had just made the worst mistake of her career. The applause spread through the studio like wildfire. Margaret grabbed her earpiece. Cut to commercial, she hissed. But Will was not finished. He turned to face the camera directly. You asked what I am going to teach young black men. Here is my answer. I am going to teach them that you do not have to curse to be heard. You do not have to fight to win. You do not have to tear someone down to lift yourself up. I am going to teach them that a smile can be a weapon, that kindness can be armor, and that real intelligence is knowing when to speak and when to let the other person show who they really are. He turned back to Margaret. Thank you for this opportunity. I think America learned a lot today. He stood up, straightened his tie, and walked off the stage to a standing ovation. In the hallway, the same receptionist who had sneered at him earlier was standing frozen. Mr. Smith, she stammered. That was... Will stopped. He looked at her. I hope you have a beautiful day, ma'am. And he walked out into the Los Angeles sunshine. Will, do you understand what you just did? On live television? To Margaret Holloway? Will opened the car door. I did what my grandmother taught me. I showed them who I really am. That night, the phone rang in his apartment. It was his mother. Baby, Carolyn said. Her voice was thick with tears. I watched the whole thing. Your grandmother would have been so proud. Something broke open inside Will's chest. You think so, Mama? I know so. You did not let her make you small. You did not let her steal your light. You stood there and you were yourself. The real you. The you I raised. Will wiped his eyes. She tried to talk about my future kids, Mama. She said I would be a footnote. Carolyn Smith laughed softly. Baby, that woman just made you a legend. Tomorrow, everyone will be talking about Will Smith. And when that show of yours airs, America is going to fall in love with you. She paused. Because America just saw what I have always known. My son does not break. If this story is hitting your heart right now, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Because we are almost at the end, and you need to see what happened next. The fallout was swift, it was brutal, and it was total. By the next morning, Margaret Holloway was not just facing criticism, she was facing cancellation. The network received over 15,000 complaint calls before noon. Sponsors pulled their advertisements within 48 hours. The clip of her attacking Will's future children played on every news station in the country. Headlines called her cruel, racist, out of touch. Within 2 weeks, her show was suspended pending review. Within 2 months, it was canceled permanently. Margaret Holloway, the queen of morning television, had destroyed herself on live TV, and all Will Smith had to do was sit there, smile, and let her show America exactly who she was. Meanwhile, something else was happening. 1 week after that interview, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air premiered on NBC. It was not just a hit, it was a phenomenon. 25 million viewers tuned in for the first episode. Critics who had dismissed Will as just a rapper were suddenly calling him the most charming new star on television. The same Hollywood executives who had closed doors in his face were now begging his manager for meetings. But Will never forgot that interview. He never forgot what it felt like to be underestimated, to be dismissed, to have someone attack his unborn children on national television. And he never forgot his grandmother's words. Truly intelligent people do not have to use ugly words to express themselves. Years later, a journalist asked Will the secret to his success. He smiled. "My grandmother taught me that you do not tear someone down to build yourself up. The people who try always end up tearing themselves down instead." Margaret Holloway taught me that. In a way, I should probably thank her. Today, Will Smith is one of the most successful entertainers in history. 4 Grammy Awards, an Academy Award, films that have grossed over $10 billion worldwide. But more important than any trophy or box office number is the lesson he carried with him from that studio in 1990. You cannot control what people say about you. You cannot control how they try to tear you down. But you can control how you respond. And sometimes the most powerful response is not a punch. It is a smile. Somewhere in Philadelphia, in the house where Will Smith grew up, there is a framed note written by a grandmother who never got to see her grandson become a legend. It says, "Dear Willard, truly intelligent people do not have to use words like this to express themselves. Please show the world that you are as smart as we think you are." Will showed them. He showed all of them. Margaret Holloway wanted to expose Will Smith as a fraud. Instead, she exposed herself. And Will walked off that stage, smiled at the California sun, and became everything she said he would never be. Because you can attack a man's past. You can question his worth. You can even come for his unborn children. But if that man has been raised right, if that man knows exactly who he is, if that man carries his grandmother's words in his heart, you have already lost. You just do not know it yet. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe if you have not already. And remember, no matter what anyone says about you, your smile is your greatest weapon. Thanks for watching.